Genghis Khan rarely admired an enemy. In his world, you were either a subject, a slave, or a corpse. But in the year 1221, on the banks of the Indus River, the great Khan stood on a ridge and watched a lone rider plunge his horse off a 60-foot cliff into the churning rapids below. The archers leveled their bows, ready to fill the rider with arrows. But Genghis raised his hand. He stopped them. He watched the man struggle against the current, reach the far bank, and shake his sword in defiance. Genghis turned to his sons and said, "A son like him should be born to every father." That man was Jalal ad-Din Mingburnu, the last sultan of Khwarezm, and for 10 years he was the only thing standing between the Mongol horde and the total collapse of the Islamic world. To understand the man, you have to understand the empire he was born into. At the start of the 13th century, the Khwarezmian Empire was the superpower of Central Asia. It was a land of staggering wealth, blue-domed mosques, and massive libraries, stretching across modern-day Iran, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Afghanistan. Jalal ad-Din was the eldest son of Sultan Muhammad II, but he wasn't the favorite. His father was a man of immense ego and little foresight, influenced heavily by a powerful grandmother who preferred Jalal's younger, more compliant brothers. Jalal was a warrior from birth, a man of the desert who preferred the saddle to the palace. The disaster began with a mistake of catastrophic proportions. A Mongol trade caravan arrived at the Khwarezmian city of Otrar. The local governor, suspecting they were spies, executed them and seized their goods. When Genghis Khan sent diplomats to demand an apology, Sultan Muhammad had the diplomats killed or humiliated. The Mongol invasion that followed was not just a war, it was an apocalypse. Cities that had stood for centuries were erased from the map. Bukhara fell, Samarkand fell. The Sultan, Jalal's father, panicked. Instead of meeting the Mongols in a single decisive battle, he scattered his massive army into small garrisons. As the empire crumbled, Sultan Muhammad fled toward the Caspian Sea, dying in rags on a desolate island, coughing his life away. On his deathbed, he finally realized his mistake. He took the sword of state and handed it to Jalal ad-Din, naming him the new sultan. But it was a crown of ashes. Jalal ad-Din didn't cower. He broke through the Mongol lines with a handful of loyal followers and rode for the mountains of Afghanistan. In the rugged peaks of the Hindu Kush, he united the disparate tribes and built a new army fueled by a singular purpose: to prove that the Mongols could bleed. In 1221, at the Battle of Parwan, the world witnessed a miracle. Jalal ad-Din faced a Mongol force of 30,000 men commanded by Shigi Kutoku. Jalal knew the terrain. He ordered his men to dismount and fight on foot, using the narrow valleys to negate the Mongol cavalry advantage. For 2 days, the battle raged. When the Mongols tried to use their classic psychological warfare, placing felt dummies on spare horses to make their army look larger, Jalal saw through the ruse and held his line. Then he ordered the charge. The Mongol line shattered. But the victory was short-lived. In the aftermath, Jalal's generals began to argue over the spoils of war, specifically a magnificent white horse. The coalition fractured, and half of Jalal's army deserted him. Hearing of the defeat, Genghis Khan himself took command of the pursuit. The chase ended at the Indus River. Jalal was trapped against the water with 30,000 refugees and his remaining soldiers. The battle was a massacre. To save his family from the horrors of Mongol captivity, he ordered his wives and children to be drowned in the river. Then he spurred his horse over the cliff. He survived the leap, and for 3 years, Jalal ad-Din lived in exile in India. He didn't just hide. He carved out a small principality in the Punjab, fighting local rajas and rebuilding his strength. But his eyes were always turned back toward his homeland. By 1224, the Mongol main force had withdrawn from Persia. Jalal ad-Din saw his opening.
He crossed back over the Indus and began a whirlwind campaign. He seized Kirman, then Isfahan, then Tabriz. Within a few years, he had re-established a Khwarezmian state.
His greatest flaw was his inability to play the diplomatic game. He spent his energy fighting other Muslim and Christian states instead of forming a coalition. He sacked Tbilisi in a display of brutal conquest that turned the entire region against him. To his neighbors, Jalal was as terrifying as the Mongols. In 1230, the inevitable happened. The Mongols returned in force, led by the general Chormakhan. Jalal, exhausted by years of constant campaigning, could no longer hold the line. His cities fell. He became a fugitive once again, a ghost haunting the mountains of Diyarbakir.
The end of Jalal ad-Din was far more tragic than his leap. In 1231, while hiding in the mountains of eastern Anatolia, he was reportedly murdered by a Kurdish villager. The man who had survived the wrath of Genghis Khan died in a lonely hut at the edge of the world. Jalal ad-Din Mingburnu was a man born at the wrong time. He showed a terrified world that the scourge of God could be resisted, and that even in the face of total annihilation, one man's courage can command the respect of the greatest conqueror the world has ever known.